Vietnam War veteran John Rambo travels across the United States in search of fellow soldiers. He learns of the sudden death of his last comrade from cancer apparently caused by Agent Orange and comes to the quiet provincial town of Hope. The cocky local sheriff, Will Teasle, mistakes Rambo for a tramp and takes him outside the city, declaring that rabble like Rambo are not welcome in his city. On the way back, the sheriff notices that Rambo, contrary to advice not to return, is going back. The sheriff stops Rambo and, threatening him with a revolver, arrests him for vagrancy, resistance, and carrying a bladed weapon. Teasle brings Rambo to the station, where the police, led by Art Galt, are trying to shave the detainee. Rambo, his mind crippled by war, mistakes a policeman with a razor for the Vietnamese who tortured him in captivity. John throws the police aside and runs out into the street, where he takes a motorcycle from a passing person and disappears into the mountains. A squad of police officers with dogs chases Rambo, pinning him to a cliff. Rambo climbs down a sheer cliff. From an approaching helicopter, Galt shoots at Rambo with a rifle, contrary to orders to only observe. Rambo jumps into the crown of a tree, spreading branches soften the fall, and he remains alive, but injures a rib. Galt continues to shoot, and Rambo throws a rock at the cockpit window. The pilot loses control, Galt falls out of the helicopter and dies. Galt is Teasle's longtime friend. Rambo goes out to his pursuers to tell them about the reason for Galt's death, but they open fire and wound Rambo. Teasle receives a message that Rambo is a war veteran who served in the Green Beret. Rambo, using homemade traps, neutralizes 5 police officers and issues a stern warning to the defeated Teasle. Back at the station, the sheriff calls for backup from the state police and National Guard. Rambo's former commander, Colonel Samuel Trotman, arrives in town. He explains to the sheriff that further pursuit of Rambo will lead to new victims. Teasle connects the colonel to negotiations with the fugitive on the radio. While Trotman calls on Rambo to voluntarily surrender on the radio, the military locates the fugitive. The next morning, soldiers enter the forest and surround Rambo. The fugitive is hiding in an abandoned mine. A guardsman uses a grenade launcher to collapse the entrance to the mine. Teasle is angry he gave the order to take Rambo alive to bring him to a fair trial, and now he will have to clear the rubble and search the mine in search of the body. Enraged, the sheriff argues with Trotman, declaring that Rambo's military achievements do not justify his actions, and leaves. Trotman suspects that Rambo is alive, but does not voice his thoughts. Rambo goes deep into the mine, overcoming the rubble and escaping from the rats, and gets out through the ventilation hole onto the road. Teasle apologizes to Trotman for his behavior, admitting that he intended to kill Rambo himself. Trotman replies that the sheriff's zeal does not correspond to his status as a peace officer, and when asked by Teasle what the colonel would do with his subordinate, he ambiguously hints that he would come to the answer in a personal meeting with Rambo. Rambo steals a National Guard truck with M60 machine guns in the back. At night, he breaks into the city, driven by the desire to deal with the sheriff. He blows up a truck along with a gas station, distracting the attention of the police, and shoots up transformers, depriving an entire city area of electricity. He then blows up a hunting store to lure out the sheriff. Teasle, armed with a machine gun, climbs onto the roof of the police station, but Rambo bursts inside and shoots bursts through the ceiling, causing Teasle to fall down, seriously wounded. The sheriff asks John to finish him off, but Trotman, who approaches, calls on Rambo to stop. The area is surrounded by soldiers and police. When the colonel persuades him to surrender, Rambo, with tears in his eyes, tells how Comrade Joe, mortally wounded by an explosion caused by a Vietnamese suicide bomber, was dying in his arms, and how activists met them at the airport with posters of child killers. Still, Rambo agrees to surrender and, accompanied by Trotman, proudly goes outside.